The Super Nintendo and action RPGs. Can you think of a more iconic duo? Here, let me try. My well-documented knack for concise titles and gushing about games that I am hyped for. I'm SuperDerek, and these are the 10 or so Japanese-style action RPGs for the Super Nintendo that I'm hyped to replay or play for the first time. This time I'm kicking things off with an honorable mention because if I don't, literally every comment would be telling me that I forgot to talk about Trials of Mana, or Seiken Densetsu 3 as I always called it growing up. And it's an honorable mention because this honestly is one of the greatest action RPGs on Nintendo's 16-bit console. But sadly, this is a game that never came out for the Super Nintendo. It was a Japan exclusive for the Super Famicom, until we eventually got it in the West for the Nintendo Switch. I realize it's just a semantic difference, but hey, these are the arbitrary rules that I made up, so I've got to try my best to stick to them. But even so, this game is so legendary for its incredible visuals, engaging action RPG combat, and compelling stories that I'm talking about it in today's video anyway. But I'll tell you what, if you really want me to talk about imports, I'd be more than willing to do so for the low cost of one like on this here video. Kicking things off in earnest though, at number 10 is the cousin once removed of Trials of Mana called Secret of Evermore. This title has a wildly interesting development story as the sole game ever produced by Squaresoft's US branch of game development. Where it may at first appear to be a copy-paste job from Secret of Mana's engine, it's actually not the case. During my review of this game a while back, I made what I thought was the reasonable assumption that Squaresoft wouldn't want to waste their own time and money reinventing the wheel. Honestly, by that point, I should have known better than to assume anything of the sort. It turns out that the US developers were pretty much treated like second-class citizens by Squaresoft, who had told the team to make a game like Secret of Mana, but then refused to let them actually have access to the original code. So the US team had to reverse engineer their own company's code from Secret of Mana. Speaking of that review, I actually received some comments by members of the development team, and if those comments are to be believed, and I think they should be, the boys back at HQ weren't very happy about that. But at the end of the day, and despite Squaresoft's best attempts to hamstring this title for whatever reason, what we got is a truly impressive Japanese-style action RPG made by Western hands. The action is fast-paced and mechanically mirrors the experience of playing Secret of Mana, but with a sci-fi fantasy cartoon morning storytelling vibe that feels wholly unique on the Super Nintendo. It does, however, fall victim to some pitfalls of the pacing and hitbox detection that keep it from feeling quite as incredible as the game that inspired it, but even so, Secret of Evermore edges out a ton of action RPGs for the number 10 spot on this list, which is well earned. Super Ninja Boy on the Super Nintendo is a kind of game that SuperDerek is destined to fall in love with. I mean, just look at it. Growing up during the height of the ninja craze has conditioned me into a Pavlovian response to instantly get excited about ninjas, pizza, and 90s attitude. Whether it's the Three Ninjas, the Ninja Turtles, or Surf Ninjas, if it's got ninjas on it, I'm inja. Oh, I'm sorry. Outside of combat, you could easily mistake the game for a Dragon Quest-style game with little square sprite walking in place on the overworld map, but when you randomly encounter a bogus disembodied dragon head or a turd herd of Kappa, the world gets turned on its side. A side-scrolling beat-em-up, that is. And suddenly you're playing Super Ninja Boy like it's Double Dragon. While playing Super Ninja Boy, you and a totally tubular teammate, or little brother, can tear it up in tandem. Yeah! Why isn't little ninja B-boy bouncing around the medieval European-style village and not feudal Japan? Parents will never get it! We play what we like! This game features some fearsome foes, sluggish slowdowns, egregious encounter rates, and mundane music that… Wait, those aren't good things. Okay, so Super Ninja Boy is a bit more of a gnarly experience than at first I may have led on, which may not have been the most righteous thing of me to do. But hey, it's all part of the charm, right? So if you're down to relive some gnarly 90s nostalgia and go ninja with your bros, then Super Ninja Boy is the way to play for the number 9 spot on this list. E.V.O.the Search for Eden was a game that took me by surprise when I picked it up from that grocery store video rental so many years ago. It was a game that I discovered shortly after realizing I could pretty easily find incredible RPGs to play simply by looking for the swooshy E logo on the box art, just like with the Squaresoft logo. Come to think of it, my grocery store rental place had a pretty dang incredible selection of RPGs back in the day. Someone in culture must have been in charge of procurement. But I digress. The Search for Eden is a trippy action RPG where you start off as just a little fish in a big pond, eating kelp and plankton for experience points until you can evolve bigger jaws, fins, a stronger tail, or a scaled body, and so on. And the process of evolution continues over the course of millions of years. You take on various forms: dinosaurs, mammals, dragons, and eventually humans? It's kind of all over the place, really. The story, insofar as there is one, is pretty nonsensical, but the grind of eating prey for XP and customizing your death machine with all kinds of animal parts is so much fun. I remember feeling like I could make anything with enough time to grind, but returning to it today, you start to notice that your progression is honestly a bit more linear than you might have thought at first glance. But even so, it is a wildly unique take on the action RPG genre, deserving its place at number 8. Here's another one that I've never played before, but also strikes me as wildly interesting and unique in completely different ways. Dragon View for the Super Nintendo is a side-scrolling action RPG that looks like it's using the Super Effects chip from Star Fox, but somehow it actually manages to accomplish this look with its own custom rendering engine. Some of the gameplay that I'm showing here might make Dragon View look like a side-scrolling beat-em-up, and honestly, there's a lot of games that kind of blur that line. Games like River City Ransom, Super Ninja Boy, and Dragon View really prove that beat-em-ups and action RPGs are only a progression system and decent story removed from one another. In fact, I bet if you're a fan of arcade beat-em-up action and you're looking to get into action RPGs, this might be a very solid way of dipping your toes into the water. Honestly, the only thing about this game that I'm not hyped about is that frame over the user interface taking up half the dang screen. Whatever though. The game looks great, and I can't wait for my copy to arrive in the mail. Making these lists is really doing a number on my wallet. Soul Blazer is such an underappreciated gem in my eyes. Not a hidden gem, mind you. I think the depths of the Super Nintendo have been strip-mined of all of its hidden gems over the years, but underappreciated, definitely. Soul Blazer is the first action RPG in what would become the Heaven and Earth trilogy, along with 2 other games on this list. And while it isn't as refined or fluid as its younger siblings, Soul Blazer's combat is still solid. A bit more similar to the combat mechanics of Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Blazer swings his sword in a nice wide arc, or casts various magics from the ball that orbits him. He plunges into the depths of various dungeons in order to restore the world and its inhabitants after the world was torn asunder by a corrupted king. Diving into these dungeons and defeating all of the enemies contained within a room unblocks a path forward, or restores people or places back into the world. If you ever played the Dark Cloud games, this is like a way early precursor to those. But perhaps what makes the game the most unique is its somber moments of darker stories woven into the fabric of the game. Blazer, the hero, is restoring a world that was ravaged by chaos, and there are some emotionally heavy moments that will catch you off guard, despite the admittedly clumsy localization with stilted text. There is a very good reason this was the second ever game that I reviewed on this channel, and it's because this game leaves an impact, which is why I cannot wait to dive back into this game. We're about halfway through this list, and it feels like it's about time I finally talk about the titan in the room. You cannot talk about Super Nintendo action RPGs and not mention Secret of Mana, the game that single-handedly shaped the discourse of the subgenre, at least in the United States, for decades. Secret of Mana is the action RPG gift bestowed upon us by Big Daddy Squaresoft when they were approaching the height of their popularity. And this game was absolutely epic. The chaos of racing from shrine to shrine, trying to gather the power of the elementals, trying to seal the power of the Mana Seed before all hell breaks loose felt like a whirlwind of adventure. Every time I play, I can't help but get swept up in the excitement and mad dash of confusion about what to do and where to go. Some of that has to be due in part to the fact that so much of the game's script had to be cut due to space constraints, resulting in dialogue that was very urgent and concise and instructional leaving very little room for emotional storytelling. Even so, the music of the game does a lot of heavy lifting in that department, giving weight to scenes that could otherwise have felt very by the numbers. I'll never forget the song that plays as Randy is exiled from his hometown. This is also the sort of game where every time I play, I discover some new optional scene I've never seen before, despite it being one of the games I used to replay over and over as a kid. Sure, there's a certain amount of jank in the combat system, having to wait for percentage meters to rise and how broken it is to chain cast magic attacks, but even so, the game is one of the undisputed kings of action RPGs on the Super Nintendo. At number 4 is a game that I didn't expect to be here. I honestly didn't expect it to be on this list at all. And I'm a little weirded out to admit it, but as much as I love other games that I've played on this list, I'm actually a little more excited by the idea of replaying a game that I have a long-standing love-hate relationship with. Brainlord is a game that took me hostage when I was a kid, when I was looking for games like The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. This is that other game by Produce, the guys who made the 7th Saga. It's got that weird, derpy, top-down look where everybody looks like they've got huge shoulders and tiny legs. But for all of this game's problems, and oh god does it have problems, this game is wildly innovative. This action RPG lets Ramir swing his sword in a nice, huge arc. Did I say sword? Because Ramir also attacks with axes or ball and chains. He can even equip different kinds of shields too, and he collects fairies throughout his journey that are trapped within these things called jades. You can have 2 fairies out at a time, and they'll autonomously provide boons to Ramir, buffs to his stats, light in the darkness, or act as turrets for magical damage. These fairies gain levels just like Ramir, and their various abilities increase accordingly. Ramir also gets the ability to perform magic attacks by charging up his melee attack button. This game is called Brainlord, probably as a reference to the fact that this game brings the puzzles, which I know is hit and miss for a lot of people out there. This game relies a bit more on the Sokoban-style push-block puzzles, slippery floor-style puzzles, some jank platforming, math problems, riddles, and eventually a maze with moving floor tiles, a pitch-black room where you can't see the walls. Did I mention this game has problems? But even so, I kinda still love the game. I remember racking up a huge $40 late fee or something with this game back in the day, and if I had to do it again, I'd probably tell my mom to just to keep the game and say we lost it, because honestly, it's a pretty fun game that I haven't played in almost a decade, and I honestly wouldn't mind checking it out again with fresh eyes. Spike McFang is an action RPG that has flown under my sonar for some time. Too long, in fact, because the game now commands a price tag that has scared me off from taking the plunge this time. On a completely unrelated note, if you feel like upgrading to being a full-fledged enabler of my reckless buying behavior and poor impulse purchasing control for shenanigans on this channel, please consider supporting the show on Patreon or becoming a channel member. The Twisted Tales of Spike McFang looks like the kind of title that I could really sink my teeth into. It's a bit of a baddie-humored action RPG following a young vampire prince fighting the very serious enemies that you might expect, such as spiders, zombies, snowmen, and cloves of garlic. It's a lighthearted game with cartoonishly vivid visuals and challenging bosses. The mechanics are simplified from most action RPGs, dispensing with intricate leveling systems and inventory management tedium. This might make a pretty good entry-level action RPG for newcomers, but with a price tag that screams emulation. It's one that I've never messed with, but it looks like a fun romp, nudging it ever closer to the top of this list. Now, how many of you saw this one coming as my number 2 spot? I'm guessing not many. Ys 3: Wanderers from Ys is a side-scrolling action RPG by Falcom, and probably the first Ys title most of us ever played, unless you were one of the lucky, the few, the vocal who actually owned a TurboGrafx 16 as a kid. Because this game was released on basically everything, including the TurboGrafx 16, Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis. As far as action RPGs go, this one's probably most similar to The Legend of Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, so no doubt fans of that game will be buying this one up in droves, which is probably why it's so cheap. It's a bit of a grind fest from what I've seen, but even so, the action combat looks wildly entertaining once you really get into it. Plus, as a sucker for Falcom's newer titles, their earlier works are a bit of a mystery to me, so I really do want to check this one out despite the fact that it's not really like most other Ys titles. I mean, there's no bump combat, it's a side-scroller. This one definitely looks like a black sheep of the series if I ever saw one, but even so, I kinda dig it. The combat looks super fast-paced for an action RPG, and the music I've heard so far is already stuck in my head. Sure, there are various other versions of the game now, but this game's pretty cheap, which is wild since there's not really such a thing as a cheap Super Nintendo RPG these days. But if you feel like spending more, this game was reimagined by Falcoma's Ys, The Oath in Felghana. But I bet with the right expectations, this one looks like it would be a fun game to explore that will punch above its current price point. Coming in at number 1 on this list is another one of those games near and dear to my heart that shaped my preferences for action RPGs as a young adult. Illusion of Gaia, otherwise known as Illusion of Time in other parts of the world, is the second game in the Heaven and Earth trilogy by Quintet, and it was in fact developed under the title Soul Blazer 2 for a time as confirmed by early screenshots of the game. The game is a bit of a departure from Soul Blazer's Restore the World formula, which is fine. Instead, the game follows a young boy named Will, who is out exploring the various ruins of the world. And by the world, I mean our own world. Throughout the game, you'll explore Incan ruins, the Great Wall of China, Angkor Wat, the Nazca Lines, so replaying this game is almost like taking a mini tour around the world. Well, about the closest I'm ever gonna get to it, if I'm being honest. The combat of Illusion of Gaia feels like a huge improvement over Soul Blazer, allowing Will to run and slide and dive and do jumping attacks. Progression is achieved by destroying all enemies within his zone again, at which point Will gains either strength, defense, or more HP, and the enemies disappear for good. Well, until you leave the dungeon and come back at least. So it's not a terribly grindy game in that regard. You cannot over-level. So if you're struggling, you just need to make sure you're being thorough and get good. And Will also has the ability to transform into a few different other warriors, such as Freedom the Knight, who wields a sword that deals far more damage than Will swinging his flute. Who'd have thunk that? But at the cost of not being able to use Will's flute or slide through small holes in the wall to solve other puzzles, so transforming between characters is sometimes required to make progress. Outside of combat, exploring the world with Will and his friends starts off as a fun romp, but takes several turns for the worse as things progress. It's honestly wild to me that this game even came out in the US, considering how notorious Nintendo of America's content guidelines were in the day. I won't get into too many specifics, but the fact that one of the climaxes of the game culminates in perhaps the most violent on-screen character deaths I've ever witnessed in a video game, or 2 of them, technically, should really catch your attention. The stark moments of somber tragedy explored in Soul Blazer carry forward in Illusion of Gaia, making this an incredibly fun action RPG and one that I cannot wait to replay. The list is over. Why are you still here for? What was that? The last curveball on the list. Yeah, alright. You're one of the real ones. The ones who liked, subscribed, and hit that bell icon to turn on notifications. Alright, since we're friends and all, I've got one more I was saving back just for you. Some might argue that Terranigma doesn't get to be on this list because it's an import, and I'm saving imports for a different video, and I get where they're coming from, but rules as written state that in this video, I'm talking about games that came out on the Super Nintendo, and Terranigma did come out on the Super Nintendo. The PAL Territories won, and it's the best action RPG on the Super Nintendo, meaning most of us never got to play this one growing up, at least until you discovered how to sail the 7 seas of the internet. And while it's a close call on my list, it even beats out Trials of Mana. In fact, it is my opinion that Terranigma stands alone as the pinnacle of the action RPG genre. After Terranigma came out late in the Super Nintendo era, action RPGs took a wrong turn when they hit the PlayStation. It's probably a controversial take, but it's mine. The reason that we never got Terranigma in the US isn't because it was inferior in any way to the games that came out before it, it's because Enix called it quits in the US right before the game came out, but their European offices were still in business for a short while longer. Before closing shop, they managed to ensure this game got to see the light of day in the West, limited as it was. The game never got a re-release or a port because the company who developed it, Quintet, went dark after their PlayStation title, the Grandstream Saga, failed to perform. See, took a wrong turn at PlayStation. Very tragic. Terranigma follows Ark, a boy living in Krista, a small town inside the planet. The world above was destroyed by some chaotic disaster. One day, on a day like any other, Ark accidentally opens Pandora's box. literally, which freezes Krista in time. The Elder returns from a trip to find Ark in his current state of affairs and sets Ark off on a journey to restore Krista, and by extension, the whole world above. Ark sets about restoring the continents, its planets, the animals, and eventually the people of the world, but along with the people come other problems and forces that destroyed the world in the first place. Along the way, Ark makes friends and shapes the direction of the new civilization. Ark's moveset and animations are varied and smooth as ever. Ark can run, jump, dive, climb, walk across ropes, pick up and throw objects, but his weapon of choice is the spear, which he uses with deadly precision to take out all kinds of monsters strewn across planet Earth. The controls are fluid. Combat is fast, and in a forward-thinking move, Ark can also use items in real time by setting them to a dedicated hotkey. As the third entry in the Heaven and Earth trilogy, this game is full of tragedy, some of which is explicit. Anyone who played the game will remember the events that transpired when Ark is trapped inside a crevasse, of course, but also the way Ark makes friends with the plants and animals once he restores them, but can no longer communicate with them once humanity is restored, also feels tragic, but in a much subtler way. Commenting on humanity's almost innate disconnect from the world around them, the game raises some interesting and important philosophical questions and encourages the player to contemplate their own existence in the world and our impact. Even though this game features a slightly worse localization than Illusion of Gaia, its haunting melodies never fail to strike just the right chords, even when the writing does. That said, there are murmurs on the wind of a fan translation effort that's in the works. I'm definitely keeping my eyes peeled for that one because I can only imagine how much more haunting this game might be once its roughest edges have been smoothed over. And on that note, maybe a rebalancing that Bloody Mary fight would also be in order while we're at it. I know for longtime fans of this channel, this entry comes as no surprise. My adoration for this title is one of the few things that I outright refuse to hype responsibly. Everyone's got character flaws, and I guess that this one's mine. But if you're new here, and if you're watching this list of Super Nintendo action RPGs, and somehow Terranigma has never made it to the top of your must-play list, I urge you to give this one a chance. It won't change your life, but it might just change your own personal top 10. But if you'll excuse me, I've got to go explain to my wife how I got all these new games and where my paycheck went. If you don't see me in a week, send help. See you in the next one, everyone.